Hi guys, welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be roaming the streets of Miami, specifically the downtown area, to compare photographs from 110 years ago with now, 2025. It's going to be really cool. I've printed out some photographs. We're going to literally hold it up exactly where it was taken and then show you guys what it looks like today, see if everything's changed completely or some of the buildings were preserved to this very day. It's going to be very cool, so come along. Okay, our first spot is at Northeast 1st Ave and Northeast 1st Street here in Miami. You can see the building off to our right with the balconies, which is this one right over here. You see a building in the back with the Mediterranean style roofing. That one in the back, and just note that building with the different elevations to its roof line over there. So these are those buildings that you're seeing on your screen there. And this picture is from 1920. So we're looking at over 105 years. All right, this next photograph was taken in 1932 outside of the Miami-Dade County Courthouse, which was constructed from 1925 to 1928. You guys can see the stairs, the edge of that staircase is right over here. This is 1932, so there's an anti-aircraft unit that is arriving at the courthouse. This is a very historic courthouse. You'll see it throughout this video in the next few shots as we circle around the block. I did want to mention that the new courthouse is actually under construction right next to it. So this is a more modern looking courthouse. Honestly, I'm not a fan of the design, but it is what will replace this one. This next photograph is from 1939. It is of the old FEC train station here in Miami. It existed from 1912 to 1963, and those train tracks would have run right beside that courthouse on the right side there, heading up towards where we are standing and even beyond this way. It is now also a train station, so it's very fitting. It is home to Tri-Rail, Metro Rail, Brightline, and this is just an empty lot. But you can see people getting off of one of those trains more or less where we are standing at right now in the year 1939. Here is another photograph from 1939 with that courthouse there, the train tracks, and of course a train in view, standing at more or less where that would have been taken. Here's an aerial view I want to show you guys, showing a stretch of those trains right beside the courthouse. You can even see some of the steam at the bottom. It's that white color you see there, that white smoke. In this next photograph, you see a lot of people lining the streets. That is President Calvin Coolidge and the First Lady parading through Miami. And at the very end, at the top left of this photograph, is the courthouse. So that must have been taken along this stretch right over here. There were some buildings off to the right here, and then on the other side, the train tracks. Give you guys another look at that crowd as President Coolidge in 1928, January 1928, came through Miami briefly on his way to Havana, Cuba for a conference. As I mentioned, that old train station would have been right here. And in 1963, when it was demolished, people actually were very happy because they believe it impeded with the flow of traffic and just caused traffic to be a mess all around Miami. So it was actually celebrated when that train station was demolished. We are now at Shayley Block, named after William Shayley, who served on the city council. This was built between 1914 and 1919. It is the only intact commercial streetscape in downtown Miami, consisting of 5 buildings in the Mason vernacular architectural style. This next photograph I didn't get to print out, so I'm going to overlay it. It is likely sometime after 1986 because the Metro Mover is in view, and this is what it looks like today. So the building is still there. You've got the Federal Detention Center in the back and the rest of Shayley Block down the street. Walking in front of the storefronts now. This would have been the Dennis Apartments. 1914 is when it was constructed. Had businesses at the bottom like furniture stores all along, and of course apartments at the top. So this would have been the Dade Apartments, built in 1918. You can see a section of it was removed in the 90s to make way for the Federal Detention Center. All right, so let's break down this Shayley plan, which was to renumber and restructure Miami's city grid. Now, the old way before 1920 was the west to east streets were numbered. So you started at 1st Street and worked your way down 12th Street, for example, was Flagler Street. And then the north to south streets were letters. So you had Avenue A, B, C, D. D today is Miami Avenue, which is that critical street. And then, of course, another critical street would be Flagler Street, 12th Street. There were several reasons why this had to take place, changing the structure of the streets and the grid, because for one, it prevented growth. If you start your streets at 1st Street and work your way down, then what are the streets north of it? Should you grow, what are they going to be numbered? Mail service was an issue, and so Josiah Shayley, which is the son of William, decided to come up with a new plan, which is the Shayley plan, inspired by Washington, D.C.'s quadrant grid. So in 1920, it turned into a quadrant. So you've got Flagler Street running east to west, you've got Miami Avenue running north to south. Anything northeast of that would have northeast in their address. Anything northwest of that would have northwest in their address, and so on with southeast and southwest. If you're in that middle, Miami Avenue, if you're north of Flagler Street, you're North Miami Avenue. South of Flagler Street, you're South Miami Avenue. And then east of Miami Avenue, you have East Flagler Street, and then west of Miami Avenue, you have West Flagler Street. So that is very helpful for the current structure today, because obviously we've expanded so much since the 1920s. This next one is the Seybold building. This is 1926 photograph. Today it is an international hub for high-end jewelry across several floors. So as we walk through the building, I want to talk about the building itself along with the person it's named after, John Seybold, who was a German immigrant who started off as a baker, learned the trade in Baltimore when he came from Germany, opened a lunch counter in Miami that was unfortunately destroyed by a fire on Christmas in 1896. He then went on to have a bakery with an ice cream parlor in 1899. He then opened the Seybold building in 1914 with a bakery inside. The shorter building fronts Flagler Street. So we started this segment in northeast 1st Street, which is where you see the tall building, about 10 stories. And as we're crossing through, we're going to go onto Flagler Slide, which is also the Seybold building, but it's a shorter building. In fact, it is originally 3 stories, and the rear annex, which is what we saw on the other side, was 2 stories and then grew to 10 stories in 1925. By the 1960s, jewelers had moved in, and today it is a central place to buy expensive jewelry. According to the website, they are the largest jewelry center in Florida, with over 300 jewelry experts across 10 floors. All right, so unfortunately there's a lot of construction going on here on Flagler Street. They are redoing the entire street, but we just exited through the Seybold building on the shorter end. You can see just how much shorter this building is, and then the one that fronts 1st Street is just poking out all the way up there. It's a really tall 10-story building compared to the rest, but that is the original right here. Here is the construction of the Olympia Theater in May of 1925, standing roughly at that same corner that photograph was taken. And then here it is in August of that same year, 1925, again standing roughly at that same corner. Construction moved very rapidly, as you guys can see. We can see here in this slightly elevated photo the Olympia Theater opening night in 1926. That is that theater right there at the corner. It is a tall building compared to the ones right next to it. Unfortunately, they removed the vertical Olympia sign at the corner. We're gonna go over there to see if there's any remnants of it. But you can see the massive line of people on opening night of this wonderful theater. They would have been lined up right along these storefronts. So as I mentioned, this theater opened in 1926. It was very popular. That is also the year of the devastating hurricane that destroyed a lot of Miami and Miami Beach. So you guys can see the very front of the theater. I wish the scaffolding wasn't around. But you can see the box office right there, just outside the building. Today it hosts several events, including the Van Gogh exhibit, which we attended for a video a couple of years ago, as well as the Lego exhibit. I'm standing behind the Olympia Theater in the alleyway because in 1956, Elvis Presley performed here, and fans were crowded here to get a glimpse of him peeking out of the fire escape. So I'm going to throw up a photograph which was taken right in this alleyway. Hundreds of fans crowded this exact alleyway in 1956 to get a glimpse of the man himself. You can see in the background of this photo with the crowds right along at the edge of this alleyway, which is exactly where I'm standing at, that distinct design with the blocks on that building behind across the street. It is that building right over there. This photograph was taken in 1945, 20 minutes after victory over Japan, effectively ending World War II. A lot of people crowded the streets here on Flagler, just across the street from the Olympia Theater. You can see that very distinctly on the left side there, along with a bunch of people, thousands of people all along Flagler Street right over here. It's really hard to replicate some of these because they're obviously standing either on a truck or I don't know what, some kind of structure that is not in existence today for me to stand on. This is the Halcyon Hotel, constructed in 1906, demolished in 1937 to build the Alfred Dupont building here in Miami. This was built in 1939, obviously after Alfred Dupont himself, who was the head of the Florida National Bank, of which he had control over. He ended up passing away, unfortunately, in 1935. But this is honestly one of the best looking buildings in the city. And we didn't have to go too far from the Olympia Theater. It's just across the street. Here's a January 1929 photograph of President-elect Herbert Hoover parading down Flagler Street. Unfortunately, the road is closed for construction, but that motorcade would have been coming towards us. And you can see that banner was put up somewhere along that building to our right, or even a little further down. Now this next photograph, keep an eye on the tip of the courthouse, which you can see that pyramid shape there. This 1927 photograph, taken just 2 years before that Herbert Hoover parade, shows the county courthouse still under construction, close to completion at the very top. You can see that big building there with the round windows just in front of it. We can see those same arched windows and of course the county courthouse behind it. Another great photograph, many people don't know this. This photograph from 1927 shows the Miami streetcar, which went out of service in 1940. It lasted pretty much from the early 1900s, the first decade of the 1900s to 1940. And that streetcar would have been right in front of us on this stretch of Flagler Street. You can see the arched windows and that tall building back there. All of these photos were taken pretty much from the same exact spot. Here we have an old Miami trolley car, which you can actually go inside of, I believe. So you would be able to just get around Miami. It even connected with Miami Beach as well. I think Coral Gables also had one. Electric cable cars that you can just get on, sit down, and just cruise around the city. Exit through here. Oh, here's a picture of it. Not the exact one, but here it is in downtown Miami. Here's a 1928 photograph of Hotel McQuarrie, which was a hotel on the upper floors and a 5 to 10 cent store at the lower level. This is also by where President Hoover passed by. His motorcade would have been heading that way, so we were just on the other side. It would have been going towards us. We are now looking in the direction of the motorcade. You can see the Seybold building we walked out of earlier. You see how it's even on both sides and then it sticks out in the middle. Keep an eye on that. You can see that at the very end, right there on that photograph. That would be that building. And then the McQuarrie building, built in 1906, was changed to an Art Deco style in 1938, which would have been this building right here. So during Hoover's visit in early 1929, he paraded around Miami to thousands of people, including Flagler Street right in front of us. He would end up staying on one of the Venetian islands called Belle Isle at J.C. Penney's estate for several weeks. So I think it's pretty cool that we're standing where pretty much his parade was going through here. Fortunately, like I said, there is some kind of construction going on. Can you guess what these were modeled after? Keep an eye on that building on the right with the kind of chain-looking design. And then that tall building on the left there. We just pan up. This 1925 photo comes to life. We were standing in the exact same spot that photograph was taken. We can see the chain-looking design still there. A century later, 1925 to 2025. Incredible. And then we've got that tall building on the left, which is this one right over here. Again, looking back at that photograph, we can see it is pretty much a match. Okay, what did you guys think? That's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. I learned so much researching for this video. And I always love looking at old buildings, historic buildings that are still preserved to this day and have found its new purpose, as we've seen with the Seybold building, as well as other buildings throughout the Flagler Street area, which was very popular back in the early 1900s as a commercial street with a lot of businesses and even a hotel, as you guys saw. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe, hit the bell button, you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. And if you're a local from here, let me know in the comments which city or which area of South Florida would you like to see me do this comparison with, because there's a lot of other places that are older than Miami that I could even go to. Miami was founded, by the way, 1896. I haven't mentioned it in the video. It's a relatively new city compared to other states, other cities across the country, hell, even across the world, where they date back thousands of years. But we were incorporated in 1896. So with that said, I'll catch you in the next video.